Hey all, welcome back to the channel. Adam-Wilber here with my business partner and good friend Felix. This is our first video in the new direction of this channel. Our goal is simply to make you a better performer and entertainer. Now, Felix has just gotten into magic a few years ago, so he's what we would call a novice. I've been doing magic my whole life. So what we're attempting to do is essentially a book club on some of the best performance theory in magic. We're going to go chapter by chapter on some of the best books out there. We're going to do a deep dive, sort of a synopsis of what the chapter's about. And then Felix will be asking some questions from a novice standpoint, and I'll try and give some feedback from a more professional standpoint as well. So Felix, thanks for being here. This is going to be a fun series. I'm really excited to dive in. Tell us a little bit about you and exactly what our first book in this series is going to be.
Oh, thanks, buddy. Hey, it's great to meet all of you. My name is Felix, and yes, it's true, I'm not a professional magician. I'm, in the truest sense of the word, an amateur, which means I get not paid to perform magic. I practice magic because I love it. In my professional life, I'm a business consultant, which means that I work with big companies on topics like strategy and innovation. And looking back over the better part of the last 2 decades, where I spent the majority of my time alone in hotel rooms all over the globe, playing cards and card tricks saved my sanity during this time. So having that said, that means that my approach is a bit different to a true professional. Being an amateur gives me a lot of freedom, in a sense that I'm not constrained by the same thoughts and questions a professional asks themselves or deals with every single day. So having this luxury I explained a couple of seconds ago, I'm not afraid to ask questions, no matter how obvious or basic the answers could be. And Adam, with his 30+ years of experience, is kind enough to take me under his wing as a mentor and help me to develop myself from the current skill set of, let's say, a novice to a hopefully proficient performer in the art of magic.
Awesome. So we are going to dive into chapter 1, which a few footnotes, I guess you would say. This is a very old book. This was written a long time ago. It doesn't mean everything he says is not of value. There's a ton of value in this book, but we have to navigate through the time difference. So bear with us as we do that. Get a copy of this yourself. You can find them online anywhere and go through them chapter by chapter. But just know some of the things that are said will feel a bit outdated, but please don't neglect the rest of the content because of that. There's real gold in this book. And if you're standing on stages performing, you should know this material. So that's a little caveat of it being a bit old and possibly outdated, but it doesn't mean that it's not of value. So let's start right with chapter 1.
The first book we are looking at is Showmanship for Magicians, written by Dariel Fitzkee. Dariel Fitzkee is the pen name of Dariel Fitzroy, who lived between 1898 and 1977 in Illinois. He was a magician and a writer, and he published the majority of his work between 1929 and 1948, starting out with a cut and restored rope manipulation manuscript and ending with a book which is called The Card Expert Entertains. Showmanship for a Magician was published in 1943. And if you can believe the statements of hundreds and hundreds of proficient performers, then this is truly a valuable and important publication for show business.
Felix, I've got some opinions on chapter 1. You know, my overview of chapter 1 is essentially him saying most magicians suck. That's the reality that just about all the magicians out there.
Yeah, I guess that's what he's saying. Yeah, it is important to start and end on a very strong note, right? And him phrasing the question, do magicians need higher standards, is like a call to arms. Is this comparable?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's very aggressive and an angry tone almost. And I get it. He's very protective of his art. I have a few issues with the way he approaches it, but in a nutshell, it really comes down to him saying most magicians out there are terrible. And instead of them entertaining or doing magic, they're doing puzzles and tricks, almost offending the audience as opposed to entertaining them.
Yeah.
And I think he says 1% of the performers out there are doing it correct.
Below 1%, yeah. I mean, he states that 75% are poor, in the best sense of the word, 25% are mediocre, and below 1% are modern and smart performers.
So that's pretty rough right from the gate. I mean, that's a turn off kind of statement, right? If I'm performing magic for 3 or 4 years or 5 years, and somebody I'm looking up to says, hey, almost everybody out there sucks, there's less than 1% that are any good, that's a pretty discouraging statement. And a lot of the books I've read that were written in the past like that almost have that aggressive, you either are the best or don't even waste your time doing it. So this rings true to that, very much so. What
I mean, he states that too many performers either do not know or completely disregard the fundamentals of show business. And I can understand where this is coming from. I mean, where do you go to learn magic, right? If you try to learn from books, you need to have the ability to understand or basically imagine how the effect would look like to the audience to learn it properly. It's much easier since when I started out with DVDs, right? I went to one of the most prominent magic companies and I ordered some DVDs and I started with this because I had a very hard time learning from a book. In all honesty, I bought a magic book, I read it, lost interest immediately, bought a DVD, and rekindled my urge to learn this, because it was much easier for me to follow. So if I try to imagine fundamentals of show business are a universe of skills you have to learn, right? We all understand how to communicate, how to project your voice, how to manage your audience, how to present individual props and all these things. But when you're really starting out, how are you learning this? Where can you learn this? What's the best approach in that?
It's a great
question.
Where
I'm coming from?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea being, you can't get on stage and be this top 1%, right? And I don't think in this chapter he gives a lot of confidence or suggestion of how you get to being great, because nobody has ever just been great, especially to the standard of the 1% that he's holding here. So you've got to have a place to suck, right? You've got to have a place to be bad. Yeah. Now that doesn't mean when you first starting out, go start charging money and doing shows until you get a good show. I think if you're taking money from an audience, you've got to be to a certain standard, right? But you before you can ever take money from somebody, you've got to be in the environment of where you'll be performing and be okay with sucking there. And a couple places that I got to do that early on were, family birthday parties, where I could just sort of volunteer my time and say, hey, I'll do a show for that. And then you grow a little past that, and I would do open comedy mics. So you can go to an open mic night at a comedy place, and if you're a comedy magician or even have some humor in your act, a lot of times they love that because it adds some variety to their act. It also gives you a really good idea of if you suck or not, because a lot of times those open mic audiences can be a little drunk and they can be a little bit harsh, but it's a great place to go and start getting some practice under your belt. And then obviously just showing everyone and anyone as much magic as you possibly can. You're only getting better by performing. That's the best way to get better. If you're performing close up to friends and family every time you go out to eat and things, it's a drastically different ball game than standing on a stage and doing 15 minutes of magic or a half-hour show. So you need a place to practice both of those and suck at them. If you've got a local magic shop somewhere nearby, a lot of times they've got clubs where you can go in and rehearse in front of other magicians. But the one takeaway I really want people to sort of emphasize with this chapter is I've spent a lot of time thinking, oh, well, I'm not going to be good enough, so I probably shouldn't develop a stage show. And don't think that way. Just because this chapter is very harsh and saying most magicians out there suck. And I think what he's trying to do is inspire us to get to a level of the 1%, right? The fact of the matter is there are a lot of mediocre magicians. And that's okay, right? Mediocre magicians can put on a mediocre show, which is still entertaining and fun to watch. I think what he's trying to do to set this book up, because there's a lot of really good material and insight in this book, I think he's trying to set up our mentality to be, we should strive to be that 1%. And we should do everything in our power to get there. Because as we dive deeper into this book, this isn't easy. To go from mediocre to good and then to great is really hard, which is why a lot of people don't do it. That's exactly what this book's about. And I think he's just trying to set the stage for us to get in that mentality of, Well, I'm not going to be one of those 25% that are mediocre, and I'm sure as hell not going to be one of those 75% that are poor. So what do I need to do to get to the 1%? And that's what we'll learn in the coming chapters. But as far as answering your question, I think you just have to find the hard work is finding the place that you can be bad. Is it an open mic night? Is it a group of friends and family where you can do a show in your living room once a month? Is it a magic club? But it's finding that location where you can go put new material out, be bad, and figure out what it takes to get better. For me, it was a few different options, but that's the first step in at least getting out there and figuring out where you are on the scale, I think.
Yeah, okay, I see where you're coming from, and I really think you have a point there. Can I ask a quick question on this? When it comes down to practicing magic, at the very beginning, when I start out in magic, I'm not in a position to come up with my own routine because I don't have an understanding what goes into a great effect, right? It's much more complicated than the basic slide. And even Fitzkee states that, magic performed poorly is presented as a puzzle. This goes completely into my basic fear that I present an effect and come off as a jerk because I present the effect in a way like, look what I can do and you can't. I'm so much better than you. Or just being too complicated so the audience afterwards can't tell their friends and family what really happened in front of their eyes. And I guess my basic question is how to get better at this, right? How to get into this flow of creating your own routines, because I think this is what all of the performers strive to do something which is personal and fits your character. Should I just stick to routines of seasoned professionals? Like purchase a script, learn it by heart, perform it so I get a feel of how it flows and how it feels like? Or how should I go on with this?
So it's like Pop Hayden said, I forget where, you showed me the thing he said, but essentially when you buy, let's say a routine from Pop Hayden, you're buying a routine from a professional who's been doing it for a long time, who's worked out every single nuance of the laugh lines, of what timing works for what line, what script works for what routine. So there's a sort of a theory or a conversation in magic that if I buy a performance, if I buy a trick from somebody, does that give me the right to verbatim use their script? I believe it does, right? If you're selling something to the online magic community, then what you're selling is the script and the routine. Now, some magicians will even say, hey, you can use the magic, but don't put it on TV or don't use this script. And that's fine. But for Pop Hayden is another great example, right? We'll stick with that example. When you buy his routine, you get the whole routine. Why not verbatim memorize that routine? If you're just starting out and you need to learn what's going to work, what timing works, what jokes work, what pacing works when I'm saying this, why not take one that's already been done, purchase that, and get a feel for it? And now you might not fit Pop Hayden's character at all, right? It may be a drastically different character than what you're doing. So maybe you can't do a Pop Hayden trick, but you can do a Cody Fisher trick or a Bill Abbott trick or a Adam-Wilber trick, something that fits your character that you could take the script, say word for word, and start feeling with, hey, that's what a good, well thought out routine feels like. And now you've at least got a template that you can build off of. So you can take that trick and slowly start making it your own with changing the script. But at least from the starting point, you know exactly what a professional routine feels, sounds, and sort of moves like. So I think that's the easiest way, because if you just get the trick and try and put your own performance to it without any sort of template or guidelines, you can come off as arrogant or look what I can do and you can't. Not everybody. Some people are naturally good storytellers and it works. But if you're having trouble with it, buy a scripted routine from a professional. Buy Bill Abbott's Celebrity Smartass, right? Or one of Pop Hayden's, if his character resonates with you, buy something like that, or a Cody Fisher routine. Or, there's a lot of routines out there that are from professionals that have been performed 1,000 times. Well, they've been worked out 1,000 times. Buy it, perform it, and you'll start to understand what it feels like to deliver a professional routine.
I mean, I guess, Adam, I guess you're right when you say he's trying to put you in the right mood, right? To strive for this 1%, not stick in the 75% or 25%, but strive to become the best of the best. Showmanship in itself, or basically performing on stage, performing in a parlor setting, performing in a close-up setting, these are completely different disciplines, right?
Well, I mean,
All of those environments require completely different setup and behavior.
for sure, yeah. Performing is performing, right? Keynote speakers, poets, musicians, actors, magicians, they're performing in one way or another. But each environment has its own rules and regulations and tips and tricks, right? Close-up magic is drastically different than stage magic. Stage mentalism is drastically different than illusionists, right? So each one has its own unique performing environment and sets of sort of rules, but performing in general, I think, is uniformed, right? What are we trying to do? We're trying to entertain, enlighten, instill wonder, astonishment, whatever your direction of entertainment or performance is. It's going to steer you down a different path. If you want to be a very proper mentalist, you'll follow certain guidelines. If you want to be a comedy illusionist, you'll follow different guidelines. But I think in the next few chapters, we'll learn some of the overarching umbrella ideas of performance, right? A simple example would be, regardless if you're a close-up comedy magician or a stage, very serious mentalist, what do you wear? That makes a massive difference. Do you just wear something casual and fun and comfortable, or do you spend some time to put on a nice suit and do your nails and things of that nature? So there are these overarching ideas of what a performance should entail. And then as you sort of refine what your niche or your favorite, your specialty might be, then there are certain guidelines you can follow for them. But as rules, I think there are certain performance rules across the board.
Okay, so if I would sum this up, in this chapter with do magicians need higher standards, I think we can answer the question with yes. He's trying to use a harsh tone to basically sharpen our senses for everything around the sheer method used in an effect, and he's trying to make you aware that it's not a slide, not palming a card or whatever. It's what the audience perceives is what magic is, right? It's not the method you do, it's about the effect. It's the perception of the audience and the experience of the audience. And this should not be taken lightly.
I think chapter 1 summed up is exactly that. Wake up, pay attention, take your craft more seriously, because 99% of the people out there doing it do it terribly. And it's lowering the standards of magic across the board. And you can get an aggressive tone from it because I think he's not happy with it. I think he thinks at his time in the 40s, he sees so many magicians just doing a half-assed job that they're not into it. They don't, it upsets him. If he's put in the time, effort, and work to be that top 1%, why shouldn't everybody? So it is harsh.
He spent a lifetime in magic, right?
Yeah.
So from releasing his first script on the ropes, I think it was around 30 or something, must be, and his last book on magic, on card magic, when he was 50, which means it's a lifetime in magic. So obviously he's going to be passionate about it, and obviously he's trying to protect what he loves so dearly.
Yep. And I think, again, it's setting that groundwork of there's going to be some hard stuff in this book that you'll probably roll your eyes at or turn a blind eye to, and don't. Otherwise, you're going to be in that 99%. So there's some really great stuff. I think it's a harsh opening chapter. I've read it a few times now, and the more I'm reading it, the more I get, okay, he's laying the groundwork for what's to come, which is, if you want to be the best or on the level of the best, buckle up, because there's a lot of stuff that you've probably overlooked. Myself, even performing magic for 20 years and being on thousands of stages, there's tons of stuff in this book that many, many times I could read over and roll my eyes and, God, it doesn't count for me. Does that mean I'm in that, 99%? I argue it does, and I'm not okay with it. So I love that we're doing this, and the next chapters will be the ones where we start pulling out some actionable steps and some things that we can argue back and forth if we believe it's in current times or if it's outdated thinking. Awesome. Well, hey, thank you guys so much for joining us. That was the first chapter. The first chapter was really laying the groundwork. Next week on Monday, we're going to do chapter 2. And we hope to see you there. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, we will be dropping videos that hopefully will help you become a better entertainer and a performer. Thanks so much for your time. I'm Adam.
And I'm Felix.
We'll see you on the next one.